going through the legislative process at that point, although we were a little bit late coming to the dance. And several members of the legislature asked us, why are you so late getting here? Well, we just found out that this was taking place. We were successful in working with them to get them to finally release the information. The Department of Transportation does not like giving out information, as you probably have noticed. And if they do give out information, they want to give it out in the form they want to give it out in. They were perfectly fine with having a member of the public or a member of the media asking them a question. What roadway, what area in Dallas County is the most dangerous on a Monday or a Sunday? And they would come up with the information and give it to you. Well, it defies the purpose of the Public Information Act. The Public Information Act of Texas says, number one, the entity that is being requested of the information does not have the right to ask you why you want it. You have a right to the information for whatever purpose you might use. They cannot, in fact, it's illegal for them to ask you, why do you want this information? Essentially, that's what they were doing by asking you to put it in the form of a question, is they would find out, oh, they're looking at this particular area or they're looking at this. The second thing is they wanted to give the information out in an aggregate form. Instead of the raw data, they wanted to kind of slice it and dice it and analyze it and give it back to you the way they see it. And we felt very strongly that, no, that wasn't acceptable. That from the standpoint of the Freedom of Information Foundation of Texas, we very strongly believe that government exists for the people, not the other way around. And unless there is a clear exception for the information being requested, it should be released to the public and let the chips fall where they may. There are 48 exceptions to the Public Information Act. If it doesn't fall within one of those 48 exceptions, you should release the information instead of running to the Attorney General for an opinion to try to keep it private. But of course, that happens all the time. Now we have a big challenge ahead of us with something called the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Open Meetings Act has been around since 1967, I believe it was, when it was first passed, and it was amended in 1973 after the Sharpstown scandal. And it basically says any governing body must do the public's business in public view. It's a pretty simple thing. And if you don't do that, there's some strict sanctions in this bill. It says you face, I think it's a $500 fine, and you face up to 6 months in jail if you violate the act. Now, this 42 years, there have been very few prosecutions. But where there have been prosecutions, people have usually gone to jail because of a clear violation. Well, all of a sudden, about 4 or 5 years ago, there were 2 city council members out in the city of Alpine, way out in West Texas, that decided they wanted to text message each other and ask them how they were going to vote on a particular issue coming up before the council. And the prosecutor found out and said, well, wait a minute. If you're text messaging each other, then you're not in public view. You're conducting public business in private. And you can figure out if a quorum is going to pass it or reject it. And 2 of the council members were charged with criminal violation, and they went through the process. At that time, they filed a federal lawsuit against the Attorney General of Texas and the state of Texas, basically saying that because they could not conduct private business and talk about private business without fear of going to jail, somehow their First Amendment right to free speech was being infringed upon. Now, I can tell you without question, the Freedom of Information Foundation of Texas would fight for anybody's right to free speech, whether we like what you're saying or not. That's part of what we're about. But not when it involves an elected official wanting to conduct business in private, because that seems to defy the very purpose of accountable government. And it's at crossways. So what happened was they filed suit. The criminal charges against the 2 councilmen were eventually dropped. The lawsuit went through the courts. The state of Texas won. It went under appeal. The state of Texas, the suit was thrown out recently, not on the merits of whether or not their right to free speech was somehow threatened or not, but it was thrown out because the 2 city council members were no longer council members. They had lost their terms because of term limits, and the court said, you don't have standing in this suit, so we're going to dismiss the suit. Well, cities and municipalities around Texas have decided that they want this suit brought back, apparently, because they want it litigated on the merits. They feel, in some cases, they feel like the threat of going to jail because they conducted business in private somehow interferes with their rights. And so now that process is underway again. The prosecutor out in the city of Alpine, the city attorney, in the city of Alpine, and criminal defense attorney Dick DeGuerin of Houston have said they will bring this suit back before Christmas and challenge the state of Texas again. The cities of Rockport, Pflugerville, and the city of Alpine have all signed on to this, the city of Sugar Land, I think, and they're trying to get other municipalities to do the same. Their lobbying organization here in Austin, the Texas Municipal League, is supporting this effort and trying to get other cities to also sign on to the suit as well. Last week, or 2 weeks ago actually, the city of Abilene was going to consider this bill, and I found out about it, that it was on their agenda for a city council meeting as a consent item, which means that there would be no discussion. It would simply be a vote yes to join the suit or not to join the suit. And I contacted the city attorney and asked him why. Why are you taking up such an issue of importance to the public that you're not going to have any kind of discussion unless this has already been discussed in private and everybody knows how you're going to vote? And he assured me that that had not happened, but he had just returned from a conference where this was discussed and it was important and the timeline was moving very, very quickly, and if they were going to be part of this suit, they needed to get in line and join it. And so I indicated to him that I was going to come to Abilene and exercise my right as a citizen, and I was going to challenge this, and I urged them to take it off the consent agenda and put it on the public agenda so there could at least be public discussion about this. If the people of Abilene didn't care, that's representative government at its best. He agreed to do that, and of course, we held a news conference the day before. Newspapers editorialized and ran articles on it. Television stations covered it. All of the online reactions from the public was negative. No, do not join this suit unless you are trying to hide something. This doesn't make any sense. And I testified at the council meeting. It was opened up for public discussion. And it was still a very, very close vote. It was 4-3 not to join the lawsuit. The council still has some very, very serious concerns about the law because either through legal interpretation or just their point of view, they believe that if a citizen were to contact them via email or by text message or by some other type of instant message and ask them, how are you going to vote on the zoning case with such and such subdivision? And they replied, I'm going to vote against it. And then that member of the public or that reporter were to send that email to another council member and ask them, hey, so-and-so is voting against this, how are you going to vote? Then eventually you could reach a quorum of the council. And that's considered walking the quorum. You don't really have a quorum in a meeting, but you now know how the majority of people are going to vote. And they're very concerned about doing that. Maybe it would be accidental. Somebody just hits a reply all button on the email and it goes to everybody. Then they're at risk of going to jail. I urged them, if that was really their consideration, then this lawsuit doesn't even address that. All this lawsuit would do is simply take language out of the Open Meetings Act that's been around for 42 years and say there's no longer criminal prosecution. You get caught, you get a slap on the wrist, don't do it again. It doesn't really address the issue. So if you really are concerned about that, I offered to help them in the 82nd legislative session coming up in 2011 to lobby the legislature for some clarification for this law that would give them adequate protections. Recently, former Lieutenant Governor Bill Hobby just came out with an editorial against joining this lawsuit for the very same reasons, because it threatens the Open Meetings Act as we know it. Politicians sometimes need encouragement. We all kind of know that. And sometimes great work like the Texas Observer and other institutions, ProPublica and others, when they call them to task, they get that